Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a frozen world. No, not the animated kind with talking snowmen and catchy songs. We're talking real, toe-numbing, teeth-chattering cold where the wind bites through wood and wool like a blade. Picture this. You're on the edge of civilization, somewhere deep in the American frontier, maybe in the Rockies, maybe on the Great Plains. There's no weather app to warn you, no neighbor to call for help, and no central heating to save you when the temperature plunges like a stone. Just you, a shaky log cabin, and the sky turning gray in that way that says, "You'd better hurry." The wind begins as a whisper, almost polite, then turns mean fast. You don't hear it howl so much as feel it clawing around the corners of the house. You were supposed to fetch more firewood today, but your boot got a hole and your youngest came down with something barky in the lungs. So now it's just before dusk, the light's draining, and that snow isn't drifting, it's charging. A full-on blizzard is barreling in. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time. I'm curious, where and when are you listening from? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The chickens are the first to panic. You hear them flapping and squawking in the lean-to coop out back, and you already know, if you don't move fast, you'll lose more than just eggs tonight. You pull on your thickest coat, stuffed with straw and sheer stubbornness, and brace yourself against the door as it resists, then bursts open into the wind. Your breath turns to ice crystals immediately. Visibility, maybe a few yards. You feel your way through the snow, grabbing the coop latch with frozen fingers and herding the chickens inside, one squawk at a time. They hate it. You hate it, but they'll live. Once they're crammed into a crate by the hearth, squinting judgmentally at your firewood supply, you face the real issue, the gaps. Your cabin, sturdy as it may seem, is still young. Some of those boards are warped, a few seams whistle. You spend the next frantic minutes stuffing them with whatever's on hand, scraps of cloth, a long-dead squirrel pelt, mud that freezes as soon as it's in place. Your fingers go numb halfway through, but you keep going. Because the cold doesn't wait. It never waits. You weren't the first to deal with this. Historians still argue whether frontier settlers leaned more on indigenous knowledge or sheer trial and error to make it through such nights. One thing's certain, though, the wind doesn't care. Indigenous tribes like the Lakota and Abenaki knew how to read the weather, how to shelter in snow-covered lodges insulated with layers of earth and hide. You've got a leaking roof and a prayer. You check the chimney. Good draft, no clog, that's lucky. Last winter, old man Wilkins down the trail nearly smoked himself and his mule to death when the flue iced shut. You lay more logs on the fire, not too many or you'll smother it and hope they catch. Not much pine left, mostly birch and some gnarled willow. It burns hot fast and then it's gone. The rest of the evening is triage. You move all sleeping gear closer to the fire. Mattresses are stuffed with straw, maybe even dried moss. Quilts patched so often they look like stitched-together flags. The baby gets wrapped in 3 layers, one of them made from an old feed sack. Your teenager grumbles, but when the wind shrieks down the chimney and the fire flickers low, he clutches the family dog like it's his only friend. And honestly, it might be. You ration tonight's meal based on firewood more than hunger. Something warm, but not that takes too long to cook. Beans, maybe, or a mash of root vegetables that taste like dirt and regret. The stew pot sits on the hearthstone, bubbling faintly. Not for the first time, you wonder if that last potato is actually a rock. Outside, the snow stacks higher. The wind finds new cracks. You know what comes next. The frost will creep in like a quiet houseguest, covering every surface in tiny ice patterns that look beautiful until your nose hairs start freezing. You test the shutters again. They hold, barely. One odd historical tidbit you cling to tonight. Some families used to sleep in shifts, not just to tend the fire, but because sharing warmth meant survival. A kind of rotating body heat system. Romantic, right? Until it's your turn and you find out someone forgot to warm the bedding. You hear it then, a soft groan, long and low, Not human, the roof's under strain. The weight of the snow is pressing, sagging the beams just enough to whisper their discomfort. You mutter a quick prayer or maybe a profanity at the sky and promise to reinforce it. Later, if you're still here. And still somehow you're comforted. This has happened before. You've survived worse. That's what frontier families do. They improvise, they prepare, and when that fails, they endure. You've heard stories of settlers using snow itself as insulation, piling it around the walls like a cold, white blanket. It works oddly. Snow may be freezing, but packed dense, it traps warmth. Nature's irony. Now you huddle closer to the fire, pulling your knees to your chest under the quilt. The chickens have stopped fussing. The kids are finally dozing. The dog snores softly, twitching in some warm dream of sunlit grass. And outside, the world vanishes in white noise and icy darkness. Somewhere deep in your bones, you feel it, the blizzard tightening its grip, but you also feel something else. You're ready. The fire crackles beside you, a loyal beast chained to a circle of stone. You feed it like it's a living thing, because tonight it is. Your heat, your light, your line in the snow between life and frostbite. But the truth is simple and humbling. There's not enough wood, not for a night this long. You count the logs, 12, maybe 13, depending on whether you break that twisted stump in half. At the burn rate you're going, you won't make it to sunrise. Not without getting smart or desperate. You wrap yourself in a blanket that smells like smoke and goat and step outside again. Your boots crunch through a crust of snow that wasn't there 20 minutes ago. This time, the wind doesn't roar. It whispers, like it's settling in for the night, pleased with how miserable it's made everything. You trudge toward the woodshed with a lantern in hand, though the wind tries its best to kill the flame. It flickers wildly, casting dancing shadows on the snow. You half expect one of them to move on its own. When you get there, the shed door's frozen shut. Of course it is. You jam your shoulder into it once, twice, a third time. With a brittle crack, it opens, and a miniature avalanche of snow spills out, burying your feet and your hope. The pile inside is a sorry sight. Damp cords, a busted axe handle, some kindling gone soft with rot. You pull what you can, stacking it into your arms, knowing it'll smoke like a chimney fire but burn just enough to matter. Every splinter counts. You grab one last half log, more bark than wood, and turn back, grumbling under your breath about the firewood fairy who definitely isn't showing up tonight. Historians still argue whether the average frontier household truly anticipated storms like this, or whether most were caught unprepared more often than not. You'd believe either side, frankly. Some folks kept neat stacks of hardwood curing for seasons in advance. Others just hoped the Lord, or their neighbors, would provide. Not that you have neighbors close enough to matter. Inside again, the fire spits and hisses at your offering. You place the damper wood near the back, praying it'll dry fast enough to avoid killing the coals. It doesn't catch. Not immediately. You blow on it gently at first, then harder until your cheeks ache from the effort. Embers stir. Smoke drifts sideways. It's working, but it's going to take time. Time you'll spend freezing. Your cheeks sting. Your hands feel like they're encased in bees. That dull, numb ache is the first warning sign. You flex your fingers, rub them hard under your armpits, muttering the kind of words you wouldn't say in church. Not loudly, anyway. There's a fringe tale you heard once, probably exaggerated, about a trapper who, after burning every usable piece of furniture in his cabin, started eyeing his sled. Then his boots. Then, finally, one of his own fingers. You scoff at the memory now, mostly to stop yourself from eyeing the kitchen stools too long. Instead, you pivot. You get creative. Old floor mats, broken crates, some curled up birch bark from a drawer, all tossed carefully into a new pile near the hearth. You snap sticks in half with your boot heel. It's noisy work, but necessary. One splinter, one flickering flame, and you've bought yourself another hour. And out here, an hour is gold. The trick, of course, is in keeping that fire burning, not just feeding it. You remember watching your grandfather, hunched over a wood stove, poking and prodding with the tenderness of a man tending a wounded animal. He always claimed it was an art form, reading the flames. Too much air and she dances herself out, he used to say. Too little and she'll choke. Now you're the one poking, gauging, praying. The wood is hissing again, but it's catching. That's when you notice the axe leaning by the doorway. You haven't sharpened it in weeks. The blade's duller than a butter knife and barely clings to its handle with 2 rusted nails and a prayer. But it's something. You drag it outside again, stomping through the snow to the edge of the woodshed and plant a soggy log on the chopping block. The first swing bounces off. The second sends a crack through the wood, but not where you want it. The third, there it is, split finally, not clean but usable. You fall into a rhythm, your breath coming in clouds, your arms aching, but a pile slowly grows at your feet. It's wet. It's miserable, but it'll burn. Eventually, you haul the load inside, every limb trembling now from cold and fatigue. The fire's still alive, thank whatever's watching over you. You stack this new batch nearby so it can dry as the night crawls onward. And then, you strip off the outer layer, the one that got soaked with snow and smoke. You hang it near the heat, risking a scorch mark, but knowing frozen clothes are a death sentence. A joke comes to mind. Not a good one, something like, how many pioneers does it take to dry out a log, all of them, and they still freeze? You chuckle once, but it comes out as more of a wheeze. Here's another tidbit for you. Some frontier families burned corn cobs or even dried cow dung when wood got scarce. No kidding. Prairie pioneers didn't have much choice. Cow patties burned slow, smoky, and surprisingly hot if you dry them right. Not a first choice. But then again, nothing about tonight is anyone's first choice. You sigh and check on the others. They're curled tight like commas. Your eldest is drooling into his blanket. Your youngest makes small, snuffling noises, wrapped in too many layers to move. You feel a swell of something warm, not the fire, not exactly, but something close. You did this. You got them through another hour. Maybe you'll get them through the next. You settle in again, feeding the fire one stingy piece at a time, drawing out the supply like it's a bank account and you're on the last coins. The wind rattles the shutters now and then, but the worst of it seems to have passed. Or maybe you've just gone deaf to it. You don't need much. Not luxury, not comfort, just a little warmth, a little light. And right now, you've got both. The storm hasn't let up, not really, but it's taken on a quieter tone. No more tantrums from the wind, just the slow hiss of snow slipping off the roof, the creak of timbers under pressure, and somewhere in the background, the low, rhythmic breathing of your exhausted family. Though you're still wide awake. It's not that you're not tired. You are. Every part of you aches. But there's something worse than cold, and it's cabin fever. Not the disease kind, mind you, though if someone starts coughing in the next 48 hours, that could be on the menu too. No, this is the other kind. The kind that starts gnawing at the edges of your brain when you're stuck inside for too long with nowhere to go, nothing new to see, and the same 5 faces testing your last nerve. Don't feel bad. Even the kindest pioneer souls got twitchy after day 3 of stormbound living. Historians still argue whether isolation on the frontier led to higher levels of depression, or whether folks just got real good at hiding it. Either way, you're starting to feel it. You try to settle down on the straw mattress, but the quilt smells vaguely like wet dog, and your middle child is sleep-twitching with a wild elbow radius. So you shift, and then shift again. And now you're staring up at the ceiling beams, trying to remember if that one crack was always there. Time stretches in strange ways when you can't leave. Minutes get sticky, hours loop. You start to notice things you've never noticed before. The way the dog snores through his nose like an old man, the faint scent of smoke in your clothes, the single thread in the quilt that keeps poking your neck. You start thinking thoughts like, what if we run out of salt? And did I leave the shed door open again? And if I yell into the mattress, will anyone notice? You'd kill for a distraction. Luckily, sort of, you have one. A thump, not loud, not threatening, just there. You freeze listening. Is it the wind, the roof, a falling chunk of ice? Another thump, This one from the other side of the wall, you hold your breath. No scream, no crash, no chicken panic, probably not a bear then, probably. You stand, groaning as your knees pop like kindling, and tiptoe across the creaky floorboards. You peek through the nearest knothole in the wall. Snow. Just snow. Drifting higher, curling into drifts like cold ocean waves frozen in mid-break. Whatever it was, it's gone. Back inside, the stillness returns, but so does the restlessness. Everyone around you is asleep or pretending to be. So now it's just you and your brain, which is the worst possible pairing. You get up, again. You open the shutter just a crack, letting in a blade of silvery moonlight. Outside is nothing. That kind of winter night nothing that feels infinite. The snow absorbs sound, the wind erases footprints. The world is still, and if you weren't careful, you'd start to believe you're the only person left alive. That's the thing about these nights. They mess with your head. You step back from the window, shake it off. You try to focus on something physical. You take inventory of the room again. Walls still standing. Roof still mostly intact. The stew pot still warm. The fire's down to coals, but you feed it gently and coax it back to life. You rearrange blankets, repack the kindling pile. Anything to keep your hands busy, your thoughts quiet. You glance over at your partner, still asleep, thank heaven, and remember how last winter, they tried to keep everyone cheerful by staging a frontier talent show. Your daughter read from the Bible in her best dramatic voice. Your son tried to juggle potatoes. The dog won just by standing there and not making a mess. You could use that kind of morale boost tonight. So you rummage around the shelves and find an old deck of cards, water-warped, faded, but still usable. You shuffle them quietly, dealing out a solo game by lantern light. You cheat a little, just to win. No one's watching, and if they were, who could blame you? Here's a weird tidbit to chew on. Some frontier folks used to boil old leather boots to make broth. Not because it was tasty, it wasn't, but because leather's basically collagen, and collagen equals calories. You try not to look at your boots. The room shifts again, not physically, but in tone. You've crossed that strange threshold where exhaustion and boredom start to mix into something dreamlike. You blink. You could swear the shadows near the rafters just moved. But when you look again, it's just firelight flickering across uneven logs. Still, it's enough to make your skin crawl, just a little. You sit down, not quite ready to sleep, but too tired to do anything else. This is where the real mind games start. Your thoughts spiral toward worst-case scenarios. What if the fire goes out again? What if the roof gives in? What if someone gets sick overnight and you don't notice until it's too late? What if you just don't make it? But then you remind yourself, frontier families dealt with this all the time. Whole seasons of it. 3, sometimes 4 months where the only entertainment was surviving. Where the walls became a map of every argument, every joke, every long stare into the fire. They got through it, you will too. Eventually, your breathing evens out. You stretch your legs beside the coals, letting the warmth seep into your bones. Your eyes flutter. Just a few minutes, just long enough to reset. Outside, the wind returns in little puffs, testing the windows, looking for a way in. But for now, it stays out. Inside, you finally mercifully sleep. You wake up stiff, sore, and unsure what time it is. There's no clock, just the kind of cold that tells you it's still deep night, and the kind of silence that makes you second guess if you've gone deaf in your sleep. Then a familiar ache returns, the one in your fingers, your toes, your ears. It's not frostbite, not yet, but it's that creeping numbness that frontier folks knew meant one thing: layer up or lose something. You roll over and instantly regret it. Your knees crack, your back protests, and your quilt drags across you with the subtlety of a slab of ice. You glance over at your boots, which are near enough to the fire to smell like scorched leather, but not close enough to feel warm. Nothing is warm, not truly. So you get up and do what every pioneer has done since the dawn of cold nights. You layer, one shirt over another, then a wool vest, then a jacket, and another. You tie a scarf around your neck like you're about to ride into a snow war and slip on your patched-up mittens. 2 lefts, but who's counting? You shuffle over to the pile of outerwear and start dressing the younger kids while they sleep. It's an awkward dance of tucking, wrapping, and whispered threats about staying still. The baby gets the good wool blanket. Your son gets the fur-lined one, though it smells vaguely like raccoon and has a suspicious stain in one corner. The teenage daughter. She already wrapped herself in everything she could find. 2 shawls, an old curtain, and what might be a saddle blanket. Frontier families layered like their lives depended on it because they literally did. But layering wasn't just about quantity. It was about strategy. The innermost fabric needed to wick moisture away. The outermost had to block wind. In between, anything went. Rabbit pelts, flour sacks, old sailcloth. Some folks even used newspaper, though that wasn't exactly comfy. You wrap your feet in spare rags before slipping on your stiff boots. Dry socks. Those were gone by yesterday. Wet socks, rewarmed by the fire and refrozen by the floor. That's your new normal. And here, where it gets weird. You think you feel something moving inside your coat. You freeze, carefully peel back the outer layer. Nothing. Then it twitches again down by your waist. A frantic shake, and out scuttles a field mouse, warm and terrified, probably hiding in there for survival just like you. You don't scream, but you do jump. The mouse vanishes behind the firewood pile. You sigh. "You're welcome," you whisper, tugging your coat closed again. Strange as it sounds, animals and humans often shared warmth, willingly or otherwise, on these cold nights. There's a fringe account of a Montana homesteader who used to let wild rabbits nest under his bed in exchange for body heat. Another story tells of an Appalachian widow who trained her cat to sleep on her feet every winter night like a living heating pad. Desperate times, innovative snuggles. You check on the dog next. He's curled into a crescent near the hearth, warm in a way you resent. He looks up at you with that face that says, "I'm surviving better than you," then yawns, wide and smug. You toss a spare coat over him for good measure. He's earned it, probably. Your own layers are bulky now. You walk like a stuffed scarecrow. But there's one more job left, checking for drafts, again. You do the slow walk, hand near the seams of the cabin, feeling for icy whispers. There's a new one near the window, just a little, but it's enough. You plug it with a rolled-up stocking that's technically clean. And then you sit. You allow yourself the tiniest moment of pride. You've layered everyone, plugged the cracks, reinforced the fire. You might not be cozy, but you're not freezing. Here's the thing most people today don't realize. Cold doesn't kill quickly. It wears you down. One shiver at a time. 1 inch of exposed skin. 1 extra breath of frigid air in your lungs. And once your body stops trying to fight it, well, that's when the danger really starts. You think about that as you press your hands close to the coals, rotating slowly. Your breath fogs the air. Your nose is running, but you don't care. You're still here. That's what matters. And then you hear your daughter stir. "Is it morning?" she mumbles, face barely visible under 3 layers of wool and what might be the laundry sack. You glance out the frost-covered window. The world is still pitch black. "Nope," you say, "still the same night." She groans, burrows deeper. You smile briefly. This is the rhythm of survival, freezing, fixing, layering, waiting. You remember a line from a settler's diary, probably misquoted but close enough. The night lasts forever until it doesn't. And it's true. Every hour feels eternal until it ends. Then somehow you made it. You shift closer to the fire. Let your body relax into the layers. The cold is still there, but you've pushed it back. You've made your cocoon of patchwork armor. And even if it smells like old stew, hay, and livestock, you're warm enough. For now, the water bucket is frozen. Not just a little skim of ice on top, solid. You tip it over and the whole thing slides out like an upside-down mold of your hydration hopes. Perfectly shaped, perfectly useless. You tap it with a spoon. It rings like a bell. Great. Now you're cold and thirsty. You poke your head out the cabin door just far enough to feel the air gnaw at your face. No chance of getting to the stream. It's buried somewhere under 4 feet of snow and probably frozen over anyway. The well, half a mile away, and that's assuming the path hasn't disappeared completely. You'd need snowshoes, a full coat of courage, and a second pair of legs. Which leaves snowmelt. You shovel in a pot of clean snow and set it near the fire. This is not your first time playing this little game. Add snow, wait, add more, repeat. What starts as a mountain shrinks to a puddle. You could pack an entire wagon load and still barely fill a teacup. No one warns you about this. That snow is mostly air, that it takes forever to melt, that it tastes like whatever's drifting through the chimney smoke or embedded in the soot-covered woodpile. But here you are, sipping a tin cup of smoky, lukewarm snowmelt and pretending it's spring water from a crystal creek. Delicious hints of birch ash and something that probably used to be a squirrel. Historians still argue whether early frontier families prioritized boiling drinking water. Some did religiously. Others figured the fire was too valuable to waste on cautious sipping. Most probably drank what was available and prayed it wouldn't bite back. Cholera, dysentery, or just a bad aftertaste. Spin the wheel. You glance around and take a head count. Still sleeping. Good. You refill the pot again, because when they wake, they'll be thirsty and they won't care what it tastes like. They'll expect you to fix it, to provide, to somehow be both plumber and magician with no tools and less patience. The funny part, water was never just water out here. You remember an old tip you read in a tattered almanac. If the snow's yellow, don't eat it. If it's pink, you're either lucky or cursed. Apparently, certain algae could bloom on the snow's surface, giving it a watermelon hue. Not poisonous, just weird. Of course, that kind of snow is under at least 3 other layers of boring white stuff right now. You toss another chunk into the pot, watching it hiss against the metal. Your hands hover nearby for warmth, half hypnotized by the steam. It's the closest thing you'll get to a spa treatment this century. Meanwhile, your partner stirs behind you. Water, they mumble, eyes barely open. You pass the cup. Smoke-aged, pairs well with regrets. They grunt, sip, and immediately grimace. Tastes like chimney. Sommelier says it's got a strong finish of desperation. That earns a sleepy chuckle. Moments like this quiet, shared misery wrapped in dry humor are how frontier couples survived. When the cold stripped away everything else, a joke could warm just as well as a fire. Maybe better. You check on the pot again, still melting. Here's a little-known tidbit. Some families added hot rocks directly into their water to speed the process. You tried that once. Cracked the pot. Now you stick to the fire. It's slower, safer, and doesn't involve chunks of granite flying across the room. Your dog trots over, tail wagging with sleepy enthusiasm. He noses the bucket, then licks the floor where a bit spilled. You take that as a 5-star review. You consider the old barrel in the corner, the one sealed for emergencies. It's got rainwater, but it's musty. Hasn't been touched since the last dry spell. And if you open it now, you lose the backup. Decisions like these are what survival really looks like. Not battles or wolves, but quiet choices between bad and worse. You think back to how many gallons your family uses when things are normal. Normal, like that's a thing anymore. There's no washing today, no rinsing, no luxury gulps, just tiny sips from tin cups spaced out passed around. You moisten a cloth and wipe the baby's face. The toddler complains about the burny taste. You promise cocoa later, knowing full well the last tin got used a week ago. Little lies keep things moving. That's another reality of cold frontier nights. You lie more often, about food, about time, about whether or not it's almost over. You lie to others to comfort them. You lie to yourself to stay sane. The pot is finally half full. You pour off the melt into a kettle, start a fresh load. It's never ending. The kids wake up, groaning about thirst, and you ration the water with all the grace of a monarch doling out royal wine. And then you hear it. A crack. Not from the fire, not from the roof. It's subtle, distant, and ominous. You set the pot down. There it is again, a sharp, dry pop, like a tree branch breaking under pressure. You freeze, then inch toward the wall and press your ear against the logs. Could be the woodshed roof, could be the sleigh, could be the well. You'll find out tomorrow, or never. That's how this works. Back to the pod. Steam swirls up in lazy curls. You wave your hand through it just for the comfort of feeling something warm. You remember being a kid, pretending smoke was ghosts, swirling in patterns to send messages. You half consider doing it now. Maybe the wind will get bored and leave. Eventually, the house falls into a quiet rhythm again. Melt, pour, ration, sip. One cup at a time. You're keeping your family hydrated on vapor and stubbornness. It's enough, barely, but it is. And that's how you survive the coldest nights. Not with magic, not with heroism, but with tiny, thankless rituals. One cracked bucket at a time. The house groans. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a soft, aching creak that starts near the roofline and snakes its way down the walls like a whisper you're not supposed to hear. You stop mid-sip, tin cup halfway to your lips. There it is again. A shift, a moan, the unmistakable sound of weight. Heavy, crushing weight pressing down from above. You glance up at the rafters. They're holding, but you don't like the way they're holding. The center beam has a slight bow to it now. Nothing dramatic, but you've been through enough winters to know what that means. The snow on the roof isn't just decorative anymore. It's turning into a problem. A very cold, very heavy problem. Frontier cabins weren't built with luxury in mind. They were built fast, strong, sure, but strong enough, not strong forever. A good roof was the difference between a cozy winter and waking up with snow in your soup. And right now, your roof is thinking about quitting. Your spine twinges as you stand, not just from worry, but from a night spent half curled near the fire, shifting between positions like a restless rotisserie chicken. You stretch, and something pops in your lower back, loudly. Yep, that's the theme of the morning. Creaking roof, creaking bones. You throw on your coat again and step outside. The door resists. A drift of snow has leaned into it overnight, determined to move in. You shove, grunt, finally burst through, and instantly regret it. The world outside is a blanket of white pressed against a sky the color of unbaked dough. No sun, no blue, just a heavy gray hush that settles into your lungs. The cold grabs at your face like a slap, and your boots crunch into snow so deep it tries to claim them for itself. You trudge around to the side of the cabin, eyes on the roofline. The drift is easily 2 feet deep, heavier where it's packed against the chimney. You stare at it, do the math in your head, and flinch when you realize you don't like the answer. Historically, some frontier families built their roofs at steep angles to let snow slide off naturally. Others used flat, sod-covered roofs that provided extra insulation, but could collapse under too much snow. Yours is the in-between, a medium pitch, built for balance, which now means you've got to decide whether to leave it alone or climb up and risk your neck with a shovel. You sigh, of course it comes to this. You fetch the long-handled barn shovel, brush off the worst of the frost, and test your footing near the edge. The snow gives under your boots with a soft groan. The ladder's already half buried. Great. You dig it out and wedge it against the side of the house. 1 foot on the bottom rung, then another. The wind picks that moment to remind you who's boss. You pause halfway up, buffeted, blinking through flurries. Your mittens are useless for grip, and your knees feel like glass under tension. You think of 1,000 reasons not to go higher. Then you think of your family, sleeping inside, trusting the roof to keep their heads dry. And you keep going. The roof is a treacherous mess. Every step feels like a gamble, but you start shoveling slow, deliberate, heaving piles of snow down into a growing wall along the house. It's quiet work. exhausting, hypnotic. After a few minutes, you can't feel your toes. After 10, your breath is coming in sharp bursts. After 15, you're laughing, not because it's funny, but because it's insane. Here you are, half frozen, half delirious on a roof held together by wishful thinking, fighting the sky with a barn shovel. It's a pioneer workout plan, cardio, core, and a deep spiritual lesson in futility. Still, you get it done. Not all of it, but enough. The weight lessens. The creaks stop. You descend the ladder with aching joints and a sense of weird pride. Inside, you collapse into a chair by the fire. Your boots steam. Your arms tremble. Your back begs for mercy. But the cabin is intact and your kids are now awake, asking for breakfast like nothing happened. You tell them it's stew again. They groan, you point at the ceiling. Still up there, right? Then stew it is. And yet, as tired as you are, there's still more to do. You roll your neck, wincing. The strain of cold nights isn't just mental. It lives in your joints, your shoulders, your spine. No one talks about frontier arthritis, but let's be real, it was absolutely a thing. Long days of chopping, hauling, mending, bending. Long nights sleeping in weird positions to stay warm. Over time, your body doesn't just age, it calcifies. You move like someone twice your age. The baby watches you shuffle and giggles. You stick your tongue out at her. She wins. To distract yourself, you set about some inside work. Relashing a loose rafter, tightening the latch on the cellar trapdoor, checking for leaks near the hearth. Nothing glamorous, but it keeps your hands moving and your brain just busy enough to drown out the aches. One strange historical tidbit from your mental vault. Some frontier families intentionally shrunk their living space during deep winter. They'd hang thick curtains to partition off parts of the cabin, keeping everyone clustered into a smaller area that could be warmed more easily. You consider doing it, then realize that would mean less space with your current crew. Nope, hard pass. Still, you pull a thick blanket across the largest window and tack it in place with a couple of iron nails. Immediately, the draft softens. The room dims. Your body says nap. Your chores say no, so you compromise. You sit near the fire, stretch your legs, and press your palms flat to the warm stones of the hearth. You breathe. You listen. You marvel at the fact that, despite everything, the roof didn't cave in. Your back didn't give out. The cabin is still standing. You are, in every creaking, cracking, cold-stung joint, still standing. You lean your head back, close your eyes. There's a new sound now. The soft, slow drip of snowmelt trickling from the eaves outside. The world is still frozen, but something's thawing. Just a little. The wind changes. Not a full shift, just a sly adjustment. Like someone turned the handle on a giant, invisible door and let in something colder. You don't notice it right away. You're busy fixing the hinge on the storage chest, trying to coax stubborn iron into compliance with the blunt persuasion of a mallet. But then your skin tells you what your ears didn't. That breeze cutting through the cracks around the door, it's sharper now, hungrier. You freeze mid-swing and listen. There's no sound from the chimney, no hoot or howl, but the air smells different, frostier, like it passed over a river that never thawed. You look at the window. The pane is already icing again. This is what they call a snap, a cold snap. One of those sudden plunges where the temperature doesn't just dip, it dives like it's trying to bury itself in the dirt. You hoped the worst was over. But no, turns out winter still has a few tricks up its frosty sleeve. You're about to curse out loud when the door rattles. Not a knock, a tremble like the frame is flinching. You step closer, open it, and immediately wish you hadn't. The air outside is punishing. It doesn't care about your feelings. It's not here to numb you. It's here to strip you, to peel the warmth from your cheeks and fingers and leave you raw like a tree sanded bare. You slam the door shut again. Well, you mutter to yourself, that escalated. And now the clock is ticking. Because once that kind of cold sets in, your margin for error goes from thin to non-existent. It's not just about the roof anymore. It's about everything. Your firewood, your water, your food, your layers, your breath. How well you've prepared determines whether tonight is miserable or something worse. Your first thought is, the chickens. You throw on your thickest coat, wrap a scarf tight, and head out back toward the coop. Every step feels like walking on a frozen pond. Your breath clouds out in plumes so thick you could bottle them. The coop door is stuck. Of course it is. You pry it open and duck inside. The smell hits you, damp feathers, straw, that weirdly sour poultry funk. But the hens are still alive, huddled together, fluffed out like angry marshmallows. One glares at you like this is all your fault. You check their water. It's already freezing around the edges. You dump it out and bring back warm water from inside. If you don't, they won't drink, and chickens can die of thirst even in a sea of snow. Historical fact break. During extreme cold, frontier families often brought their livestock into partial shelters, lean-tos, root cellars, even shared rooms in the cabin. It wasn't ideal, but when survival's on the line, you stop worrying about chicken poop in your living room. You're not quite there yet, but you're close. Back inside, the fire needs more wood. You grab a log, then hesitate. If this snap lasts longer than a day, your stack won't be enough. You toss the log in anyway, because the alternative is letting the cabin cool, and that's how pipes freeze if you even have pipes. You don't. You have barrels, one inside the door filled earlier from the stream. You check it, still liquid, barely. You grab your flint and steel and stoke the flames higher. Sparks rise like fireflies trapped in amber. The warmth spreads. Your fingers tingle as blood returns. Then comes the water check, not the barrel, the hidden cache outside. You bundle up again and step out behind the cabin. Beneath a thick blanket of snow, you've dug a crude well box, insulated with straw and scrap cloth, to store sealed buckets of stream water. It's basic, but it works. Usually. You lift the lid. Ice crystals glint on the top layer. One of the buckets is frozen solid. Another is mostly slush. The third is still viable. You carry it back inside like it's treasure. Because it is. Now it's rationing time. Water, wood, calories, chores. Every move you make has a cost now. You have to do the math in your head. How much warmth does this action earn me? How much energy does it burn? Even going to the outhouse becomes a mission. You wait until it's absolutely necessary, then make the run. On the way back, you notice how the sky's shifting. Not just grayer, but darker, earlier than usual. That means wind, maybe snow, maybe something worse. You tuck everyone in early, kids under blankets, extra quilts over the cots. You double-check every window for leaks, stuff rags into the gaps. You roll another blanket into the crack at the bottom of the door. You sit by the fire, hunched forward like a gargoyle, feeding it stick by stick. There's no room for pride here. You've burned old chairs before, crates, broken tools, one time an entire sled. You listen to the wind building. You feel the change in pressure in your ears. The cabin makes that sound again, that quiet shifting groan. You brace your boots against the floor and try not to imagine the rafters giving way. And then you wait. That's the worst part of these nights. The waiting. It's not active. It's not heroic. You're not out hunting wolves or wrestling bears. You're just sitting there, stoking a fire, listening to the wind try to unmake your home, and hopping, really hopping. You didn't make a mistake 3 days ago that's about to come back and bite you. Fringe historical tidbit for the curious. Some frontier folks believed in weather curses, blaming sudden cold snaps on bad luck, witchcraft, or the wrath of ancestors. There's one account of a man in Vermont who swore his fireplace betrayed him because he mocked a passing preacher. You're not that superstitious, but you do whisper a little something to the fire, just in case. You check your kids one last time. Their faces are red-cheeked, breath slow. You add an extra pair of socks to the youngest and tuck a hot rock, warmed by the fire, near their feet. It's an old trick and it works. The fire is steady now. The walls are holding. The water's inside. The chickens haven't frozen. Your skin still stings, but you're dry and you're inside, and that's enough for now. You let yourself close your eyes for a moment. The wind presses harder, but it can't get in. Not tonight. You wake to silence. Not peace, not calm, just that eerie, unnatural hush, the kind that makes the hairs rise on the back of your neck before your brain fully catches up. No wind, no creaking timber, no rooster. And that's what finally pulls you upright. You throw off the blanket and immediately regret it. The air in the cabin is sharp as a saw blade. Your breath fogs in front of you, visible even under the rafters. The fire's gone out. Embers barely glow in the ash. You forgot to wake up and stoke it. Or maybe you did, but the cold was just faster this time. It's what frontier families dreaded most, the dead air morning. The coldest part of the coldest night, right as dawn breaks. No wind to keep snow moving. No clouds to trap heat. Just open sky and plunging temperatures, sometimes 20, 30 degrees colder than even the previous midnight. You shuffle to the fire like a zombie in a wool robe. You fumble for kindling and flint. Your fingers are slow, clumsy. You mumble something half swear, half prayer as you strike steel to stone. Sparks, smoke, tiny flame, it catches, thank God. You sit cross-legged on the floor, hunched like some ancient monk over your holy fire, feeding it life, breath by breath. The warmth creeps outward reluctantly. Eventually the others stir. Your partner's teeth are chattering before their eyes are even open. One kid is fine, buried in so many quilts they look embalmed. The other is crying softly, curled into a tight ball with purple-tinged toes. You throw on a pot of water to warm. Hot tea, hot porridge, hot anything. This morning isn't about productivity. No fence repairs. No wood chopping unless you're desperate. Today, it's about survival through stillness. Because here's the truth frontier families knew. Your body is a heat engine. Every movement burns fuel. Every step outdoors risks frostbite. The wisest move in deep cold. Hunker down and minimize heat loss. You become the insulation. You pile everyone near the hearth, nestled together like wolf pups. You hang blankets over the door and windows, creating makeshift walls inside the cabin. A trick borrowed from the Lakota winter lodges and trapper lean-tos, turning one warm corner into your entire world. It's not elegant, but it works. You remember stories from neighbors, how some folks in the Dakotas used to sew themselves into fur robes during the worst weeks, slept, cooked, and cleaned without ever taking them off. One lady allegedly went 3 weeks without removing her boots. Historians still argue whether that's dedication or desperation. But out here, it's often the same thing. The biggest challenge now is moisture. You start watching the ceilings and walls. Breath builds condensation. Too much and the beams will drip. Too little airflow and mold creeps in. You crack a window, just a sliver. You feel the temperature drop instantly, but the air freshens. You close it after 3 minutes, just enough. Then comes the water dilemma. Last night's bucket is half empty. You start rationing. Half mug per person for drinking, quarter mug for cooking, that's it. Everything else, dishes, washing, even brushing teeth, gets skipped or handled with melted snow. Which means time to go get snow. You open the door and it's like the entire world turned to powdered glass. Blinding, endless. It didn't fall last night. It settled quietly. A thick white blanket over every surface, every branch, every fence post. It's up to your knees, light and dry. You step outside with a lidded pot and start scooping. Not from the top. That's too powdery. You dig down to the packed layers, cleanest, densest. Snow has a shockingly low yield when melted. It takes 10 cups to make 1 cup of water. You know this. You hate this. But you keep scooping anyway. Back inside, the fire's brighter now. The kids are huddled, playing a game with stones and old buttons. Your partner's peeling potatoes for a noon stew, humming a song they only hum when they're worried. You look at the snow melting in the pot and think, This is the day the doghouse becomes a mansion. Because you remember, you have a doghouse. A little structure out by the trees, meant for a hound that passed last winter. It's empty, it's dry, and most importantly, it's still insulated. And if this freeze keeps up another day or two, you'll need to move some supplies there, especially anything you want to stay above freezing but not inside the cabin. Root vegetables, canned goods, jars. You bundle up and trudge out. The doghouse is half buried. You dig with a shovel, then your gloved hands. The inside is surprisingly dry. You start planning what to move. Carrots, maybe. Onions. The medicine chest, just in case the cabin roof fails. Every frontier home had their version of a fallback point. If the main shelter gave way or flooded or froze solid, you needed a plan B. Sometimes that was the root cellar. Sometimes a neighbor's barn. Sometimes just a pine bough linta with a canvas sheet. But you always had to think 2 failures ahead. It's grim, but it's also honest. You head back to the cabin and notice a new problem, one you didn't expect. The smoke. It's not rising right. You watch the chimney and see the plume curling downward, hugging the roof before vanishing. That means poor draw, possibly backdraft, possibly chimney blockage from snow or ice. You rush inside, check the fire, it's fine. Then you kneel by the hearth and feel it, the backflow, a gentle reversal of air. Time for an emergency clean. You throw on your thickest gloves, grab the chimney rod and pop the flue. A gust of cold air rushes in like a ghost trying to get cozy. You jab upward slowly. A cascade of soot and half-frozen ash falls into the firebox. You cough. Everyone coughs. But then the air shifts again. The smoke rises normally. Disaster averted, but barely. Fringe frontier tidbit. Some old-timers believed that chimney failures weren't mechanical, they were spiritual. The house breathes wrong, they'd say, as if the whole cabin had lungs. If the smoke reversed, it was a sign to say a prayer or burn sage. One man even used to tap the hearthstone 3 times before starting a fire, to wake the old ones. You decide to try it next time. Why not? By late afternoon, the sun finally appears. Not warmth, just light, but it helps. You take inventory. You have enough wood for tonight, enough food for 2 days. Water's tight but manageable. Everyone's fingers and toes are still attached, and nobody's cracked from cabin fever. Yet, you wrap the day by boiling rocks again, same as last night. You place them in pots by the beds. You toss a hot stone into the chicken coop too. They won't like it, but they'll like freezing less. Then you bundle yourself in layers and sit by the fire, stirring soup, watching flames dance shadows across the walls. And for just a moment, you feel it again. Not fear, not fatigue. Pride. Because you kept the fire going. You kept your people safe. And even if tomorrow brings another freeze, another break, another disaster, tonight you win. You don't notice the draft at first. You're too busy tying up the day's chores, patching a seam in the water bucket, rearranging the bedding so everyone fits tighter, checking on the boots lined up by the hearth. But then, something makes you pause. A flicker. Not of light, of air. Cold air teasing the back of your neck like a thief's breath. You stand slowly, turn toward the corner by the floorboards. Then you see it, just a subtle ripple in the dust near the wall. You move closer and kneel. Your fingers graze the baseboard, and yep, there it is. A nail has come loose. The log shifted. There's a gap just wide enough for the cold to crawl in like a spider. Frontier cabins are not airtight fortresses. Over time, logs shrink, wood warps, the earth settles. Even the most tightly chinked wall begins to breathe where it shouldn't. And when it's -20 outside, that 1-inch gap might as well be a broken window. You stuff it with rags, an old sock, a strip of wool, a crumpled piece of linen you were saving for candle wicks. Then you wedge a wooden wedge behind it tight. That'll do for now, until morning. But it reminds you of something that frontier families knew all too well. The cold always finds a way in. And once it does, it stays. It creeps into your tools, your furniture, your bones. By now, the walls themselves are cold. The logs radiate it. You can warm the air, yes, but the structure, that's where the true battle is. You rub your arms and look around. You're going to need more insulation, and not just for the people. You step outside again, lantern in hand. The snow has crusted over, the kind that crunches like shattered porcelain underfoot. You make your way to the woodpile, dig deep, and find the good stuff, the seasoned, split oak that holds heat like a secret. Then you remember the window skins. A trick you picked up from an old-timer, stretched oilcloth or animal gut scraped thin, used as a makeshift glass. It lets in light but blocks wind, and in a pinch, adds another precious layer. You pull a few from your stores, tie them across the two tiny cabin windows, and fasten them with pegs and strips of hide. It's ugly, it works. Back inside, everyone's starting to get punchy. The kids are tired of being quiet. They've played every rock game twice. You've read the same storybook cover to cover, even did the voices. Your partner is clearly craving adult conversation, but you all know the rules: conserve energy, keep warm, don't open the door unless you have to. So you switch to what frontier families did on nights like these: oral storytelling. You take turns spinning tall tales, a moose who learned to speak Latin, a squirrel that robbed a trading post, a ghost dog who guarded buried gold. One of the kids blurts out a new one. What if a bear came in and tried to be our friend? Everyone laughs. It's ridiculous, but you roll with it, build on it. The bear drinks tea. The bear knits sweaters. The bear says, "Oh, I brought a spare blanket from the forest." You all laugh harder than the joke deserves. That's the point. Laughter makes heat. Historians still debate whether the average frontier family truly enjoyed the long cold nights, or if they just got very, very good at pretending to. Some journals suggest it was a time of bonding and quiet creativity. Others paint a bleaker picture: isolation, cabin fever, frostbite, and whispered arguments in the dark. The truth, like always, is probably both. Eventually, the mood dips. One child curls up, asleep mid-sentence. The other is quiet, thumb in mouth, staring at the fire. Then comes a knock. Not on the door, on your brain. Because you suddenly remember something: the cabin roof. The snow has been building on it all week. It hasn't slid off in 2 days. If the weight gets too heavy, you're in real trouble. You sigh, pull on your boots, wrap your scarf high, and head outside with a broom. Climbing the ladder is a risk. You take it slowly. The wind bites your cheeks. You're up there for what feels like a full hour, sweeping, thumping, gently dislodging the layers without cracking the planks. When you climb back down, you're frozen to the ribs, but lighter inside. You've bought yourself another day. Once inside, you take stock again. The fire is down, time to replenish it. But this time, you reach into your secret bundle. Every family had one. Yours is wrapped in a bundle of cloth in the back corner behind the dry beans. Inside are your emergency combustibles: curls of birch bark, a few sticks of fatwood, maybe even a piece of pitch pine you scavenged last fall. This stuff burns hot. Too hot for everyday use, but perfect when you need a fast boost. You toss in a piece and watch the flame leap. It hisses with gratitude. The heat returns, licking up the chimney like a grateful beast. Quirky tidbit for tonight. In northern Minnesota, it was rumored some families used old bacon fat as an emergency fire starter. Dried on twine, it burned slow and strong. One fur trapper claimed he once started a fire with a piece of salt pork jerky. Not recommended, but apparently effective. Now the cabin feels alive again. You drape wet socks near the hearth, roll up extra quilts for tomorrow's breakfast bench, and place a hot rock under the covers to pre-warm the bedding. Then for a final touch, you listen. You press your ear to the walls, to the floorboards. You listen for the creaks, the groans, the whispery sighs of settling timber. That's your early warning system. If something going to give, the The roof, the chinking, the chimney. You'll hear it first. All seems quiet. Too quiet. No, just enough. You settle under the covers, back to the wall, one leg extended toward the stoneware jug tucked under the blanket for heat. Someone mumbles a final question. Will it snow again tomorrow? You don't answer right away. Because tomorrow doesn't exist yet. There is only tonight, only the fire, only the people within arm's reach, and the knowledge that you somehow once again outlasted the cold. You wake before the sun. Or maybe you never fully slept. Hard to tell when the cabin's shadows shift as the fire dims and your brain, been half alert all night, one ear trained on the creak of snow sliding from the roof. But now, in the soft blue of pre-dawn, the cold is back with vengeance. The kind that wraps itself around your ankles before you've even thrown back the covers. Time to move. There's no luxury of lingering under warm quilts on a frontier morning. The fire needs feeding before the frost creeps further. You rise, bones stiff, joints cracking. The floor is colder than memory. You pad across it, sidestepping that one loose plank that always shrieks like a banshee, and get to the hearth. The coals are stubborn this morning, a dull red, not quite dead, but not eager either. You crouch low, coaxing them with a breath, then another. You add kindling with reverence, like making an offering to some hungry god. A hiss, a spark, then blessed flames. While the others sleep, you work. This is the sacred hour of the frontier caretaker. You bring in more wood, shake out the quilts near the hearth, and begin heating the iron kettle. Breakfast must wait, but warm water won't. There's ice on the inside of the window again. Not a delicate frost, no. This is thick, brutal rime creeping over the animal gut pains like veins. You scrape it gently, then stop. It's better to leave it now. That ice is your insulation. You pull on your heavy coat. Your breath fogs. This morning, you'll need to do the unthinkable. Step outside again. Not just for firewood, but for the real ordeal, the outhouse. You brace yourself. Because yes, there's a reason why every frontier story eventually includes this scene. There's no way to romanticize it, just pure, frigid necessity. You make the dash, boots crunching over refrozen snow, your breath leaving a comet trail behind. The outhouse door resists, frozen around the edges. You throw your shoulder into it. Inside, it's as cold as outside, but somehow crueler. The wooden seat feels like punishment. You grit your teeth. You make it fast. No, you're not thinking about it. Back inside, you peel off your outer layer, rub your hands near the fire, and thank your past self for the warm water now ready in the kettle. You pour it into a basin, add a clean cloth, and start wiping down your face and neck, just enough to feel human again. By now, others are stirring, groggy shapes under blankets. A child sits up and mumbles, "Is it morning?" You nod, pass them a warmed stone wrapped in cloth, and tell them not to get up yet. Not until the sun finds you. And it does eventually, a pale disk rising behind the trees, throwing long, sharp shadows across the snow. Light reaches through the window skin, hazy and golden. It touches your shoulder. You close your eyes and lean into it like a cat. That's the thing with these brutal winters. They teach you to savor tiny victories. A sunbeam, a hot drink, dry socks. The day begins. And with it, your small rituals, each designed to resist the creeping freeze. You heat up yesterday's corn mush and add a chunk of lard. Protein, calories, anything to stoke your internal fire. A pinch of sugar if you're lucky. The kids wrinkle their noses but eat it anyway. Hunger's a better seasoning than salt. Then it's time for the morning check. You open the trunk, preserved food still intact. Good. You inspect the stored water, one barrel near frozen, not ideal. You crack open the root cellar, still dry. Excellent. Historians still debate whether families truly rotated their stores daily or simply relied on luck and desperation to get them through. Journals mention both. Some families inventoried like accountants, while others guessed and prayed. You're trying to be one of the careful ones. Still, today brings a different challenge. One you've been putting off: Snowden livestock. The barn is low and squat, barely insulated. The animals have been huddled for days. You gear up, double mittens, face wrap, thick scarf. You open the cabin door, brace for the cold, and nearly disappear into a snowdrift. It's risen halfway up the doorframe overnight. You shovel your way out like a mole tunneling to daylight, gasping from the effort. The barn is worse. When you force the door open, a wave of musty warmth hits your face. Animal breath, manure, damp straw. It's not pleasant, but it's life. The animals blink at you, their water pails crusted with ice, their feed low. You move fast. Break the ice, refill hay, rub the cow's ears. One of the goats tries to eat your mitten. You push her gently. Not today, Betsy. By the time you return to the cabin, you're steaming, sweat frozen in your underclothes, hands aching despite the gloves. You sit, you breathe. Then, with a half laugh, you reach into your pocket and pull out a tiny miracle, a dried apple slice. Quirky tidbit: frontier folks often dried apples not just for taste, but because the act of chewing something sweet and leathery helped relieve cabin fever. It gave the jaw a job. Some believed it even kept melancholy at bay. You chew slowly, like it's gold. The afternoon passes in patchwork chores: mending socks, sharpening tools, teaching a child to knit. You pass the time by recounting what you saw outside: the icicles like glass daggers, the squirrel tracks across the roof. You make a game of it: who can draw the tracks in the ash with a stick. Evening creeps in again, stealthy and blue. The fire gets new logs. The cabin fills with smoky warmth. You hang a blanket across the front door for extra insulation, double up the bedding, tuck the children in clothes. Then, for just a moment, silence. A rare, deep kind. The kind where you realize no wind howls, no roof groans, the world has paused. You step outside just briefly. The sky above is velvet black, stars like diamond dust. You draw in a breath so cold it hurts, then smile. You survived another one. And not just survived, held the cold at bay. The snow can bury your fences, freeze your milk, break your roof, but it hasn't broken you. Not yet. Inside, the fire crackles one last time before settling. Blankets rustle. Somewhere a child hums. And outside, the night takes over again. The storm changes everything. Not all snowfalls are the same. Some arrive like gentle guests, silent, swirling, softening the world in white. But not this one. This one kicks the door open and announces itself with a vengeance. It starts at night while you're asleep. Wind howling, roof creaking, shutters thudding like war drums. The cold presses harder than usual, slithering through every crack and gap like a living thing. You jolt awake, heart racing. The air inside the cabin has changed, thinner, sharper. It's not just cold, it's ominous. You reach for your boots, still damp from the day before, and tug on your coat. Every muscle groans, but you have to know. You crack the door. And what greets you isn't just snow. It's a wall of it, slamming into your face, turning your breath to ice midair. The wind roars like a beast. Somewhere, the forest moans as trunks sway and branches snap. You slam the door shut, bar it. Storm here, you say out loud, as if the others can't hear it already howling. A baby stirs, a child curls deeper under their quilt. You sit near the fire, eyes wide, listening to the rattle of nature trying to break in. There's no way to do your usual rounds today. This isn't a day for usual. The to-do list gets replaced with a shorter, grimmer one. 1. Keep the fire alive. 2. Keep everyone warm. 3. Don't go outside unless you absolutely have to. The snow won't just pile up, it'll bury things. Tools, doors, paths, sometimes whole cabins. You've heard stories of families waking up and realizing the snow has covered the chimney, smoke filling the home with nowhere to go. Historians still argue whether that's exaggerated frontier lore or horrifying fact. Either way, you check the chimney damper. The wind shrieks louder. A wooden beam creaks, you glance up. Nothing's cracking yet, but you feel it. This is a test. It's not long before the cabin starts groaning from the weight of the accumulating snow. It's subtle at first, a low creak, then another. You eye the ceiling. The snow is heavy and wet. Some frontier families used long poles to tap the roof from inside during storms, jarring loose packed snow. You, however, grab a broom and gently thud it against the rafters, a rhythmic knock that somehow reassures you. Thump, thump. Not today, you mutter, stay up there. With everyone huddled in one room, body heat becomes currency. You bring the children closer. Add another layer of pelts. You heat rocks again, wrapping them in old rags and sliding them near cold toes. Even the dog curls into the mix, ears back, eyes alert. Animals know when something's wrong. The wind hits the cabin in waves like fists. And then the candle goes out. Darkness swallows the room. You fumble for the flint, relight it. One flame becomes two, becomes four. You set them in safe spots, shielded from drafts. Every light flickers like it's shivering. You force yourself to eat. A bit of smoked meat, hard biscuit dipped in hot water until it softens. The baby drinks warm broth from a tin cup. A child whispers, "Is it gonna break the house?" "No," you say, "not if we hold it up." You mean it half joking, but that's the frontier logic. The family is the house. If your spirit holds, the walls will too. You pass the time telling stories. Not happy ones, not yet. Instead, survival tales. That time Uncle Eli got snowed in for 5 days and lit a fire on his table to survive. The woman who gave birth during a blizzard alone and cut the cord with a sewing needle. How she named the child Storm. The kids listen wide-eyed. You tell it slow. You want them to remember not just the stories, but the act of telling them during a storm. Quirky tidbit. In some cabins, folks would hang pots and pans from the rafters during storms, not just for storage, but so they'd crash down if the ceiling sagged too much. An early warning system, 1800s style. You don't have pans hanging, but you do keep checking the ceiling every time the fire pops. Hours pass like this, slow, thick, heavy. You nap in turns, light dozing that doesn't let you drift too far. You dream of falling snow and waking up buried. Then you actually wake and feel relief that you still can. At one point, you open the door just a crack to gauge the damage. You can't see more than a foot. It's like looking into a cloud. The snow's so fine, so fast it looks alive. You swear it moves toward you with intent. You shut the door again. By midday, the wind eases, but only a little. You take stock. Water's still okay. Firewood indoors is holding up. You haven't had to go outside yet. But the outhouse, that's not an option anymore. You bring out the chamber pot. The kids wrinkle their noses. You tell them to be thankful it's not a wooden bucket like some folks used. They don't laugh. Later, you take the risk. You tell the older kids, watch the fire. Don't open the door unless I knock 3 times. Then you bundle up, grab the shovel, and step into a white world. It's worse than you thought. The snow has piled past your knees. You wade forward, squinting. The barn is still standing, thank God, but almost completely buried. You dig a small tunnel to the door, open it. Inside, the animals blink in surprise. You check their water, add feed, murmur thanks. On your way back, you stumble. Snow slips into your collar, and for a split second, your breath catches in your throat. But you push up, grab the shovel, and keep moving. Inside again, you shake off, steam rising. All good, you lie, because they don't need the full truth. That night, the storm begins to lose its fury. The wind softens, the trees stop groaning, the cabin holds. And the silence that follows, it's deep, the kind that hums in your bones. You lie back, wrapped in pelts, listening to it. You survived the worst of it. Tomorrow will be the digging out. But for now, just for tonight, you let yourself rest. Not because it's safe, but because it's earned. Mourning after a storm doesn't bring peace, it brings weight. Literally. You wake to a world gone muffled. It's so quiet you can hear the snow settle. That's not poetry, that's reality. Sound doesn't carry the same way. Footsteps become whispers. Voices, even loud ones, feel like they're being swallowed mid-sentence. But what's most immediate is the cold. A storm like that shaves down every layer of stored warmth. Even the fire seems groggy, low, and sulky. You stir it, add kindling, blow gently. Flame sparks like it's unsure whether it wants to live today. You understand the feeling. Eventually, the cabin glows again, and you take your first real look outside. A white wasteland, flat, bright, endless. The snow doesn't sparkle like the stories say. It blinds, and it buries. The fence line, gone. The trail to the barn, gone. You know exactly where they are, but it doesn't matter. The landmarks that kept your brain oriented, tree stump, rock, that weird patch of thistles are all erased. You might as well be dropped into a snow-covered moon. Here's the task, dig. Out of the doorway, to the barn, to the well if it isn't frozen, to the road, if there even is one today. You wrap your scarf high, pull your gloves tight. The shovel's cold as betrayal in your hands. The first stab into snow hits something that's not quite solid, not quite soft. It's more like packed fog, heavy, reluctant. You begin to clear. One scoop, then another. This is frontier cardio. Minutes feel like hours. Your breath steams into the air, catching sunlight and vanishing. You try to make jokes to yourself. Frontier gym membership. One shovel, one blizzard, no refund. No one laughs, not even you. The kids peek from the door. They want to help. You say no at first. But then you remember it's not just your job to survive. It's theirs too. So you assign small tasks. Carry snow out in buckets, clear windowsills, fetch firewood from the stash you covered last week. You're not just delegating, you're teaching. Because here's the thing, cold always comes again. And next time, they might be the ones with the shovel. Some families built small tunnels between their cabin and barn to avoid ever stepping outside during storms. Others tied ropes between the buildings so they could find their way in whiteouts. You remember now, there's a frayed old rope in the storage chest. You tie it from the front porch to the nearest fence post. Doesn't seem like much. But it's the beginning of control in a landscape that wants to take it all away. Historians still argue whether such tactics were actually common or just region-specific lore passed down by word of mouth. Doesn't matter. Today, it's saving your butt. By midday, you've managed a path to the barn. The animals are stiff but alive. A thin layer of frost has formed inside their nostrils. You rub their flanks, check for signs of distress. They look at you like you're late. Back at the cabin, the air is warming. A stew simmers, bits of dried root and meat and hope. You collapse on the bench and realize your legs are trembling. That's the thing about surviving storms. It doesn't end when the wind does. Recovery is its own battle. Then you hear it. A crunch. Not snow collapsing, not a branch snapping, a footstep. You freeze. Another crunch. You step outside, heart thudding. And then you see them, your neighbor trudging across the white plain. Half covered in snow, beard iced over, wrapped in what might be every coat he owns. He looks like a walking quilt. You wave, he raises one mittened hand. Neighbors don't just drop by in weather like this. So when he reaches you panting, he just says, "We good." You nod, you. Chimney cracked, put it out. We're huddled in one room, figured I'd check. You invite him in, share food. He shares news. The creek's frozen solid. A tree crushed his wagon. His youngest lost a boot and walked barefoot half the night until they found it. You offer him dry socks. He offers you a jar of pickled something, you're not sure what. Frontier currency. As evening falls, the snow begins to shift again, not in storms this time, but melting. Not fast, not soft, but enough to form icy crusts that make walking treacherous. You slip once and land hard. Your wrist twinges. You mutter something your mother wouldn't like. The pain fades, sort of. The light fades too. You make sure the path stays clear. The rope stays taut. You knock snow off the roof again. You check every window for frost buildup. You turn water buckets upside down after using them to prevent freezing. It's all constant and exhausting. But by the time you settle in for the night, something's different. It's not warmer, not really, but it feels safer. Because today you proved it, this cabin holds. You hold. Even the kids are starting to relax again. You tell them a story before bed, something old, maybe a bit ridiculous. You embellish. Quirky fact: some settlers believed you could predict how bad a storm would be based on how early raccoons grew winter fur. The fluffier the tail, the worse the season. Guess we should have watched more raccoons, you say. The kids laugh. And finally, after days of crouching in storm mode, the laughter feels good. You lie down, pull the covers up, and feel the deep ache of every muscle that worked hard today. Even your fingers feel sore from gripping the shovel. The dog snores, someone farts, and a kid blames someone else. Normal. You smile. Outside, the snow shines in moonlight. Inside, the fire flickers. And for once, you don't fall asleep listening for danger. You just fall asleep. Because some nights, survival means finally letting your guard down. Just a little. Snowmelt brings hope, but also chaos. You wake to the drip, drip, drip of icicles crying themselves into puddles. The roof creaks. A stream of water snakes down the window pane. It should feel like a victory, like you've made it through the worst, but your gut says otherwise. Frontier wisdom whispers, the thaw is trickier than the freeze. And it's right. Everything's wet. The floorboards are slick. Your boots never seem to dry. The fire keeps the air warm but never quite dry enough. Your clothes hang from rafters, steaming gently like they're trying to forget the blizzard too. Outside, the yard is a battlefield of slush and hidden hazards. Snow conceals branches cracked clean through. The roof groans under leftover weight. And beneath the white, ice is melting into sudden, sucking mud. You try to walk to the shed and immediately lose a boot in the ground. You retrieve it only after a minute of grunting, arm deep in muck. That's the thing about spring on the frontier. It's not flowers and birdsong. It's mud season. They don't put that on the postcards. Wagon wheels sink to the axles. Paths become soup. And the more you try to move, the more the earth pulls you back like it's personally offended you want to leave. But there's work to be done. You start hauling out soaked hay to dry what little can be saved. You reinforce the coop, repair the latch that snapped in the ice. The axe handle cracked from the cold, so you whittle a new one with fingers stiff from yesterday's bruises. It's around now you realize there's always something broken. The cold doesn't leave without payment. The kids help where they can. You catch them dragging wet clothes out to the line in a wheelbarrow like tiny oxen. You don't stop them. You're too busy refitting the chimney cap, which was torn half off by the gale. Up on the roof, you get a full view of the world post-blizzard. It's a mess, but it's your mess. And for the first time in days, the sun feels like it means it. Not just a dim circle in the sky, but a warm hand on your back, saying you made it through. Still, the danger isn't over. Historians still argue whether spring floods were more destructive than winter storms for early settlers in low-lying areas. But you don't need a historian. You've got creeks, and you've got eyes. And those creeks are rising. You hike out to the nearest one and see it. Once a trickle, now a muddy torrent. Trees bob in the current like drowned ghosts. You spot your neighbor's chicken coop floating downstream. Hope it's empty. Back at the cabin, you dig trenches. Hastily, desperately. You build dikes from logs, from snow, from anything with shape. The children are on lookout duty. If the water crosses the red rock, they yell. That's your flood marker. That's the point of no return. It doesn't reach it, but it flirts with it. You spend that night half awake, listening for gurgling, for cracking wood, for anything unnatural. Instead, you hear frogs. Frogs, like some audacious choir of green rubber balloons croaking from puddles where snowbanks once sat. And you laugh, hard. Because if the frogs made it, maybe you will too. Come morning, the sun rises stronger. The trees drip like they're melting out of stone, and the snow recedes just enough to uncover what's next. The damage. You walk the property and tally it up like a battle report. 3 fence posts snapped, 1 window cracked, half a sack of flour molded through, the barn door barely hanging on its hinges, the wagon, half buried, won't move till June. And then there's the odd stuff. Like the antlers. Just one poking out of the snow behind the woodpile. You dig a bit, it's an entire deer, frozen, whole, probably collapsed mid-storm. You cover it back up, not out of squeamishness, out of respect. You understand now more than ever how easy it is to stop moving and never get back up. Later, you find one of the kids poking at a pile of slush with a stick. What's that, you ask? I think it's the shovel we lost last month. You both stare. It is the shovel. Frontier archaeology. As the days go on, the thaw accelerates. You hear about a family 3 miles north whose outhouse sank straight into the muck with someone in it. No injuries, just pride. Quirky fact, some settlers kept their food stored in tree hollows or buried barrels during the thaw because root cellars turned into indoor swimming pools. You test your own and sigh. It's ankle deep in water. Guess you're a barrel person now. You drag everything salvageable out, line it along the fence to dry. The cabin smells like a mix of wet burlap, wood smoke, and pickles. Better than feet, marginally. There's a moment, just one, where you sit on the porch, mug of tea in your hands, watching the last of the snow drip from the roof. The steam rises. The air carries a scent you forgot, earth. Not frozen earth, living earth. The wind moves gently through the trees. Birds flit. A squirrel skitters across a branch like it owns the place. And for once, you're not thinking about surviving the next storm. You're thinking about planting. Because after the thaw comes the seed. You know it'll be back. The cold, the snow, the hunger, and the ache. But for now, you have ground to stand on. And mud beneath your feet is better than ice on your roof. You smile at the thought. Then the porch creaks. A board snaps beneath your chair. You spill the tea, swear mildly, a kid laughs. Back to work. Time to sow, time to hope. The mud is drying. Not fast, not evenly, but it's drying. You no longer lose boots to it daily, and even the chickens are walking more like chickens and less like disgruntled boats. It's planting season, and on the frontier that doesn't begin with soil. It begins with sighing deeply and hauling rocks. There's always more of them. It doesn't matter how many you pulled last spring. Somehow, like vengeful ghosts of geology, they rise again. You dig one up that's the size of a turkey and joke that it probably has a family nearby. It does. You find its cousin half a foot away. Still, the sun's out. The ground is thawed. And even if your back aches, your hands know what they're doing. You sharpen tools with care. The hoe glides like it remembers the shape of the furrows from last year. The rhythm comes back. You plant potatoes first, then beans, then the corn, each seed pressed into the cold dirt with quiet ceremony. You think of it like placing bets, with the sky, the earth, the rain clouds. The kids help, sort of. They mostly make little hills too close together, or drop entire handfuls of seeds in one spot. But they're trying. And when you're a frontier parent, trying is good enough to earn soup and a seat near the fire. You show them how to space the rows using their own steps. Big toe to heel, you say, Every seed wants its own room to stretch. One of them mishears and gives every bean a rock pillow. That's not how soil works, but it's adorable, so you let it slide. You work from morning until the shadows stretch long, and the first mosquito shows up like an uninvited dinner guest. And you suddenly remember, with spring comes bugs. Oh joy. You slap one on your neck, slap again, miss again. You start dancing that little frontier jig known as the mosquito two-step. It's fine, you're used to this now. When night falls, you watch the fireflies blink like a Morse code across the tall grass. You haven't seen those since before the freeze. The kids run after them with cupped hands and squeals, and the only thing you chase is another log for the stove. Inside the cabin, it's warm, not survival warm, not let's not die warm, just cozy. That word means something new now. The garden outside may look modest, but it holds the future. Every mound of dirt, a gamble against blight, beetles, and hailstorms. Historians still argue whether frontier families who focused more on root vegetables had better cold storage survival rates. But in your experience, the real answer is plant everything and hope at least half lives. You dream of green shoots, of cabbage heads, of the first strawberry so sweet it shuts the kids up mid-complaint. But before any of that happens, the rain has to cooperate. And the sky, still dramatic. One morning, a cloud rolls in like it means to erase the sun. You hear the wind shift, the trees sway. You scramble to cover the seedlings with scrap cloth and overturned crates. It rains like the sky's breaking up with you. You wait it out inside, staring at the window like it's a war movie. Later, you assess the damage. Could have been worse. Some soil washed, but most of the seeds are still there. You count that as a win. Back in town, if a two-building stop qualifies, you trade for a sack of barley. The storekeep says the river ferries back in operation, which means people will soon be moving again. Supplies will be easier, maybe even some letters from back east. You get excited at the thought of paper, ink news. Then you remember, you still owe the blacksmith a wagon wheel. One step forward, one debt-shaped reminder backward. Another quirky fact, some frontier families reused ashes from the stove as a rudimentary pest deterrent around their gardens. You give it a shot. Sprinkle ash around the beans like a suspicious wizard, hopping to confuse beetles into staying away. The oldest neighbor tells you, works best if you swear at the bugs while doing it. You try it. Quietly, respectfully, PG-rated swearing. Still, the days grow longer. The sun lingers. The air softens. Birds build nests in the eaves again, dropping bits of straw like confetti. You start sleeping through the night. Not every night, but some. The nights aren't filled with dread anymore. Just dreams. Sometimes about food. Sometimes about your old house before the move west. Sometimes about the sound the snow made when it first collapsed off the roof in April. Sometimes about absolutely nothing, which is its own small miracle. You no longer wake up stiff with fear, just stiff with work. And that's the kind of ache that goes away with motion. One evening, as you finish checking the fence for the millionth time, you hear laughter. Honest to goodness, stomach-deep laughter. The kids have built a mudslide behind the cabin. They're covered, absolutely caked. You should scold them. You don't. Because tomorrow will come with more rocks to move and rows to weed. But tonight, let them slide. Let the mud take the day. You sit on a stump, breathe in the scent of damp soil and pine, and let your shoulders drop. You're still here. The seeds are in. The thaw didn't take you. And that makes it a good spring. The stars come back. Not just the ones above, but the ones in your head, the ones you'd forgotten you noticed. Weeks ago, when you stepped outside, your eyes darted around like a prey animal's, searching for signs of ice, smoke, trouble. Now you step out and your gaze goes up. Just up. Because the danger has changed. It's not gone. It's never gone out here. But it's quieter now, and you're not bracing against every gust of wind or staring at the livestock wondering which one will keel over next. The cold is no longer a thing with teeth. It's just a memory, and sometimes a lesson. The days ahead are still hard, but tonight, the logs are stacked high, the cabin snug, and the fire is polite, not desperate, not starving, just there. You wake early, but not because you're scared of frostbite. Just because the birds make such a racket, you'd think they were paid hourly. Sparrows scream like they've got stock in the sunrise. You sigh, stretch, and accept that sleeping in is still a fantasy worth chasing, but not today. You dress fast and step outside barefoot just to see how far the spring has come. The mud's firm, the air tastes like grass, your breath doesn't show in the morning light. Progress. You gather eggs, real ones this time, warm and brown-speckled from hens who have finally forgiven winter. A hen clucks her judgment as you snatch her offering and thank her like she's royalty. She pecks your boot anyway. Frontier appreciation is a one-way street. Inside, you cook without your hands shaking. You don't measure anything, you just know. The biscuits rise like old friends. The kids wake to the smell and shuffle in with bed hair and opinions. The oldest wants to go fishing. The youngest wants to build a mud castle. You want to sit down for 5 blessed minutes, but that's not in the forecast. So you go fishing. It's not about the fish. It never was. It's about standing by the bank, watching the current drag past, and letting the chill of the water kiss your skin in a way that doesn't make you feel like death is tapping on your shoulder. It's gentle now. It's allowed. The line doesn't even twitch for the first half hour, and that's fine. Because you remember that time in January when your toes felt like glass and you swore you'd never feel warm again. That memory sits like a ghost on your shoulder, but it doesn't bite. You finally catch one. Not big, not pretty, but real, a fish, and you lift it like a trophy of survival. Because that's what it is. The pantry isn't overflowing. The cabin isn't perfectly sealed. Your boots still leak. The axe handle is still splintered, but you've made it. Historians still argue whether early frontier families endured out of grit, luck, or sheer stubbornness. But you're pretty sure it's a cocktail of all three, shaken by hardship, and served in a chipped enamel mug. You carry the fish back and show the kids. They act like you brought home a whale. The mud castle plan is quickly scrapped for the noble art of watching Dad cook the fish and telling him how to do it better. You let them. After the meal, you stretch out on the ground. The sun soaks into your shirt. Your limbs feel like they belong to you again. A breeze sneaks under your hat and makes you smile without meaning to. Later that night, as the lantern flickers and the kids drift off mid-sentence, you sit by the fire and sharpen your tools for the week ahead. Not because you're bracing for survival, but because this is the rhythm now. The world has turned. A fringe detail some folks forget. Many frontier families actually celebrated the last frost date like a holiday. You think about marking it somehow. Maybe a pie, maybe just a long nap, maybe both. You lay your tools aside. The candle's low, the fire hums. And outside, a wind sighs through the trees, not like it did in January, howling and wild. This wind moves like it's tired too, like it's had a long season and is just passing by now, no longer trying to get in. You go to bed. You don't wear every piece of clothing you own, just a shirt and socks. Luxury. The bed's not warm yet, but it will be. Because now, you know, the coldest nights aren't forever. They just feel like it while you're in them. But you learned how to make heat out of hope, out of habit, out of ash and faith. And in the quiet dark, just before you fall asleep, you whisper to yourself, not like a prayer, but like a promise. Next winter, we'll be ready. Now let your breath slow. Let the last chill fade from your mind as the cabin's quiet wraps around you, like a well-worn quilt that smells faintly of wood smoke and wild mint. Outside, the stars are blinking softly in the sky. Nothing urgent, Just gentle, pulsing reminders that the worst has passed and rest is finally deserved. You don't need to plan tomorrow. You don't need to brace for snow or ration salt or wait to check for leaks in the roof. For tonight, there is only this stillness, the hum of the logs settling in the stove, the creak of timber holding fast, and the steady rhythm of your own breath. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts wander to green fields, soft rains, the sound of boots on dry grass. The fireflies will return and the garden will grow, and your body will remember warmth again like an old friend. The cold taught you, but it didn't take you. And now in the slow peace of spring, you let go of the last shivers, the last worries, the last clenched muscles of winter survival. You're safe. You're home. You're warm. So sleep easy, frontier soul. The night may still be long, but you no longer fear it. You've earned your dreams. Sweet dreams.